Low-cost carriers are as common, and in many places more common, than network carriers, something that Herpa hasn't quite figured out yet. But every now and then they actually do make a low-cost carrier model. I assume by accident, but in this case they actually did a nice model of an Arabian low-coster. With that, hello and welcome to a new episode of Review, where we today will take a closer look at an Airbus A320-200 of Air Arabia. At the front of the box we have a lovely image of the aircraft in real life, and underneath that we find the Air Arabia branding. Then on the back side of the box we have the same image once more. We are provided with the original dimensions of the aircraft model and some additional information. So that's it for the box. Let's take a closer look inside and at the aircraft model inside. And here she is, the Airbus A320-200 in the standard livery used at the time this model was released of Air Arabia. The airline that started out in 2003 and is based in the UAE by now has several subsidiaries such as Air Arabia Abu Dhabi, Egypt and Morocco. The model itself we see here from Herpa Wings was produced in 2005. So let us take a closer look at the model itself to see what it actually has to offer. And we start our tour around the aircraft model with a look at the tail section, where we on the vertical stabilizer have the Air Arabia branding. On the fuselage we then find the full registration code of the aircraft, the flag of the UAE and the aircraft type specification. Towards the tail of the aircraft we unfortunately don't find any detailing around the APU exhaust. That however is not unusual for an aircraft model that has been released from Herpa around that time period. Then if we move to the front of the aircraft across the fuselage we can find the writing of airarabia.com. Underneath that we have the branding or name of the airline in Arabic writing. And although details around the cockpit section are scarce, I mean we have the cockpit windows and only the cockpit windows, not even the window wipers, and we could argue that the cockpit windows perhaps are printed on a tad too high. I still prefer the overall look, especially of the mold of this aircraft model compared to anything that Herpa currently releases, as in my opinion the shape of the cockpit section is just much nicer. And then we can take a quick look at the engines, or more specifically the engine nacelles. They have been kept in the same grey metallic look as we see on the fuselage on the back of the aircraft. Hence we can't really see the silver leading edge, so let's just assume or just pretend that Herpa actually has added it. But as a pretty detail, at least they have added the Air Arabia branding. The physical detailing of the engines, well, that's a bit of a mixed bag. It's not terrible, but of course when we look into the engines we can see the fan blades just haven't been pulled off nearly as nicely as with more recent releases. Then on the fuselage, just above the wings, we have the emergency exits printed on, which leads us straight to the wings, which we should also take a closer look at. Starting over the top side, where we can see the different flaps, slats and spoilers have been carved out rather nicely, and we have some different shades of grey for additional detailing, but that's about it for the top side. The underside at least has the full registration code printed on. My favorite detail on the wings, however, are the wingtip fences, and yes, they haven't been shaped as nicely as with more current releases. However, I actually really like the detail in the livery that they have been painted in red, and I think Herpa has actually also executed it rather well. The landing gear is the standard landing gear that Herpa used at the time for all the Airbus A320 family aircraft models, which is great because it looks much better than anything we have these days. Especially the front landing gear looks so much better than anything that Herpa currently releases, and they really should consider to revert back to this. And then last but not least, we also have the doors to the cargo compartments printed on here in the back of the aircraft and here at the front of the aircraft. So there we have it, the Airbus A320-200 in the Air Arabia standard livery used at the time this model was released from Herpa Wings in scale 1 to 500. And what can we say about this aircraft model? Of course, there are a few points where this model doesn't quite match up with what Herpa is releasing today, such as the wings that are more detailed and nicer executed today, or the engines, or the way the wings have been mounted into the fuselage. That might sound like a lot, but honestly speaking, it doesn't make that much of a difference, because the landing gear and the mold, and especially the shape of the mold around the cockpit section, is much better than what we get today. And that just makes the overall model much nicer to look at. Of course, around 2005 when this model was produced, there were other manufacturers that would add many more details to an aircraft model. And this model really doesn't boast with details. It has the basic standard things that you need for an aircraft so you can recognize it as an aircraft, and it has the livery and nothing else. But I mean, even today Herpa doesn't do much more than that. Still, the very nice mold and the great landing gear for me make a huge difference. And that is why I would say yes, this aircraft model is even today worth having in one's collection. But of course I would love to see Herpa make a new version of this aircraft model with the up-to-date standard livery of the airline. And with that, we have reached the end of today's episode. If you have enjoyed this video, then don't forget to leave a like. That would be very much appreciated. And of course, if you are new around here, why not hit subscribe? That would be absolutely awesome. With that, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you soon again. I'm checking out, and bye.